Yes, thank you very much, Heather. And thanks a lot to Tom and Henry. You set the stage actually already with your introduction for our next panel. Welcome, gentlemen, to this panel. Pleasure to have you here. Yeah, flexibility, of course, is one big driver for cloud production, where production teams expect that we can spin up and down systems much faster than we could do this with metal and bare-bone stuff. Distributed production, of course. I think COVID was a huge driver, which pushed us back home, and we wanted to mix literally the 514 or whatever at home. And of course also secondary content without to bring up another truck to the venue, which is of course space, costs, travel costs, etc., etc. Which is already in place. I mean, cloud production for playout systems, not so critical in terms of latency and time, but the audio, as we know, audio is typically the biggest problem in TV production, the biggest complexity. The budget is always the smallest, but the complexity is the biggest in audio. I can tell you. It's especially for the latency we have. It's perhaps the biggest problem we have to cope with in cloud production. But we still try to be more efficient. Anthony, where are we today in terms of cloud production? You guys have already some experience with cloud production.
Yes, we've started quite recently. Essentially, we followed the video guys who have started to work with the cloud to enable more production and more flexibility with their video productions. And then they have reached the limits of the audio mixer, which were embedded with their video mixing solutions. So we have started working with them and enabling some audio mixers, let's say larger audio mixers in the cloud. So we are really at the early stages of bringing all that to the cloud. So we've faced quite some challenges. Essentially, that's, as you said, the latency. I would say that until you stick to the video is going to cloud, okay, let's follow them and go to cloud. Video is on-prem, let's remain on-prem with them. And then the latency, when you follow the video, the latency is less an issue, I would say. And then the biggest challenge, I think, is really all the contribution between all your ground production and the cloud production. And that's something on which we're currently working on.
And you're doing already cloud production today. You are
yes.
already live with
yes,
cloud
production. Yes, we have started.
How about you, John, in IMG? You are also already trying it and be already on air with cloud production? Right?
We are, yes. So within IMG, I look after PLP. So there's a lot more going on within the IMG business that sort of I'm not fully across. But from a PLP's perspective, we've started doing a localization piece for South American commentary. We're doing cloud on-prem using the GVAMP system.
Right, so everything is mixed for this community add-on in the cloud already today.
It is
on-prem in the cloud, which you put
on-prem. Yeah, the operators are based within IMG at Stockley Park, and the commentators are based in Miami and Mexico.
Right, very interesting. Yeah, audio is time sensitive, Martin. Even especially, of course, with our ears. Yeah, there's physics which we can't overcome. Yeah, it's something like 5, 8, perhaps sometimes 10 milliseconds, and then the comp filters start heavily to be noticeable for commentators. I still remember the early days of digital processing. We also had the same problem. My easiest solution for this was to turn higher the headphones so that the commentators couldn't hear their own bone sound, but perhaps it damages over the time years. However, how can we cope with this? How can we cope with the latency stuff when we go in the cloud?
It varies a lot depending on the workflow and depending on the type of production. I mean, we developed a cloud deployable intercom system as a result of COVID, a twist on our hardware product, and we've worked with many of the people here since 2021, I guess, to support their cloud productions. And actually, latency is one of those things that hasn't really caused too much of an issue. It depends on whether or not you've got talent presenters in the venue, whether they're on screen or not, whether they are able to hear their co-presenters use it just atmospherically. We work with a lot of American broadcasters, for example, who put people on screen wearing full full headphones. In which case they need a local mix of their of their audio together. So they need a local IFB feed. But for a lot of applications, it's actually not caused a problem. To take the point of our friends at Audiotonics, though, if you're deploying an intercom system in the cloud, you want it to be as close to the operational staff as you possibly can. And in some cases, cloud isn't the right place for it. On-prem, bare metal is the right place. But it really is a matter of unpicking the workflow and figuring out what the best procedure is to get around it. But for us, latency has not really been a massive issue with the people that we've worked with.
Interesting.
Yeah, again, I think the point is you have to divide the user case between whether they're actually hearing themselves or, say, for example, hearing people on a panel. If that's the case, then, as you said, you kind of need to get below the 5 milliseconds before it starts becoming annoying. And there, I think the answer is either direct monitoring via a device that's on site, or you actually set up a sub-mix on site using a mixer on site, be it a software mixer or a hardware mixer. Good question. And then obviously for things like, director feeds and for hearing the sound of a stadium, etc. If there's a delay on that could come from the cloud. I don't think that's really an issue. So I think you really need to think about exactly what you're listening to, and then use the appropriate tool for the appropriate user case.
Yeah, it's perhaps then the distance of what Audiotonics explained already from the venue or from the operator in terms of operating the mixing console. I think we could add also that whenever talents and the interviewees are in a very noisy environment, they also need kind of monitoring, otherwise they can't understand the questions and the answers. So again, the answer is to have kind of local processing on site, and the cloud processing is doing the actual mix. But of course, latency is not only a problem for the talent. We have solutions out there already since we do remote production with Carlbeck, with Lavo. It's doing the same actually with a local IFB mix. But it's also a problem for managing not only the equipment, which we heard. There is a kind of acceptance of whatever, perhaps 50 milliseconds, 100 milliseconds. I know from virtual mixing to virtual studios, 200 milliseconds is already quite a long time. You open up your fader and it's happening quite late. How do we cope with this to manage a team? The director is asking for camera 1, and he's hearing it too late, especially if you do music mixes or something like, which is very time critical, corner kick or something like this in soccer, Anthony.
Because we have started doing remote production before starting doing cloud production. So we already have all these, let's say, latency issues. We have that latency challenge because we have our 2 big data centers in Europe, and we have 10 production workspace in Europe, and everything is remote. But until your latency is very low, and I think that on average we should be between 15 and 20 milliseconds with all our workspace on our private network, that's completely acceptable from the operators.
Okay. Also for communication, that they get the commands at the right time. Same experience for you, John?
Yeah, with the commentary piece, we sort of haven't really come across any issues with that, really. The commentators do a local mix to them to hear each other. But it's fairly formulaic in how they work. So they take cues off the video sequences and know when to start to come in. So the communication from our side is actually sort of very minimal. So the latency hasn't really been an issue.
On our side, for the remote commentary part, the cues and all the director who comes from Central is embedded with the video that they see. So the cues, what we call the cues, the let's say indications are in sync with the video, and then their voice only is coming back to the data center. And on the commentary side, even if you have a delay of 100, 200 milliseconds, if it's the voice only, nobody will be able to feel it, because with the human reaction, when the commentator starts talking, even with 200 milliseconds, that's not an issue. And until the international sound remains in sync, of course.
How about you have the talents in different locations? You have one talent, like we know this from news. One guy is in New York, and the other guy is in Berlin, in London. We know that with satellite times, they had to wait for the answer, and sometimes they were even how do you say for this in English? They were jumping in when the other guy was still
Interrupting.
interrupting. Right, interrupting. Thank you for this. How do you cope with this? With these
Well,
problems?
to be honest, I mean, cell phones have been the battle that broadcasters have had for years, and that whole idea of people jumping across each other because the delays were so long. With the technology that we're introducing, cloud-based technology, we actually get around that. We're a lot quicker than a cell phone. We're quicker than a Zoom call or a Teams call. So I think, if anything, using managed connections between data centers to join locations together in the fastest possible way, you're managing that in a much better way, and you're beating those problems. So for the most part, I think we're introducing technology that solves those kind of issues.
Interesting.
And I think, the other point to mention is that not all connectivity is the same. Some of the broadcasters out here have, massive chunky pipes directly into AWS, etc. So clearly they're able to get very, very low latencies. But if we're talking about control latencies for actually controlling a mixer remotely, I mean, we ourselves have got a 250 millisecond reaction time as humans. So then the question is afterwards, how quickly, when does it start feeling sluggish? And obviously Tom and Henry have, talked about that already. And I guess the best practice there is try and remain the control sort of regionally, at least. I think that's kind of like a best practice thing. But I think it's obviously if you're trying to control from London to Australia, then it's perhaps a little bit of an issue. But I think as long as you apply logic and try to be within the region, I think it's acceptable.
That means they won't hire Rob and me to mix any shows in the US and sitting back home in London or in Germany, right?
You may just have to travel halfway.
Yeah, okay, somewhere in the middle of the ocean.
Maybe the Bahamas, maybe.
Yeah. If we are looking back to the beginning of IP, when IP was deployed for live broadcasts, I still remember my time in Labo. We had to do so many POCs. People just didn't trust that this is going to work. And I think all the companies are still doing POCs, right? Just to assure that IP is as reliable as we know this from AES, MADI, and SDI. How about cloud production? How long did you try it out to get it ready for live production?
Again, we followed the video. The video guys have started working on cloud production during the COVID period, of course, as everybody probably. And then in the last, they have been working really, 100% time on that. It took us around 8 months from the start of our POC to be on air with the video production. And then for us, in terms of audio, we're doing remote production since 2018 on all our commentary insertion platform based on hardware. And then since, I would say, almost 4 years, we have started using software mixing solutions. So then adapting these solutions to the cloud was not really an issue. So we have started working on that since, I would say, maybe 2 months. And that's already doable. As I said, the biggest part on that is really all contribution and the fastest contribution as possible between ground to cloud.
For you the same?
Yeah, as you alluded to at the start, sort of COVID sort of opened the doors and put a lot of projects out there that got us looking at clouds and different ways of working. We had to still make material and get it out there. But it was mainly video-based, so easy live with the fan walls into stadiums and doing shows on vMix and things, which is some stuff we wouldn't have considered, I don't think, given the circumstances. But yeah, the post then sort of cloud has always sort of been something that we've looked at and thought about with regards to innovation. And with the current project that we're doing, it was a fairly fast turnaround. But it just ticked all the boxes to go cloud, from sort of practical levels to kit delivery times. So I mean, it was a matter of months, I think, from sort of concept to delivering on that one.
It's perhaps different on your side. You had to babysit a lot, right?
Well, it has been different. Although it's been different and the same. So when we introduced the product, we very quickly signed a partnership agreement with Grass Valley. And the AMP product was in its infancy at that point. So we aligned the Infinity VIP intercom system with Grass Valley AMP. we were able to introduce it to the market through some of the early AMP proof of concepts. In parallel with that, because we had a customer base for other Telos products, we were able to talk to broadcasters about potentially using an intercom platform, and this is still within the pandemic, that enabled them to put a fully featured intercom panel on a computer or on a phone, or wherever they might be in the world. So a lot of our proof of concepts are actually tacking our product onto an existing matrix-based comm system, and then using that to expand their ability to work remotely, or even to work in the field. So we found sort of apocryphal stories coming from people. I mentioned this to you when we were outside earlier, that a very well-known news broadcaster came up to me and I said, how's the POC going? We left them running for about 3 months or something. He said, well, we just used it on the Queen's funeral. Yeah. You did? I mean, strictly speaking, POCs aren't meant to be used in broadcast. That's sort of the contract, but it doesn't really matter. But it was things like that. We were finding we were all over the place with use cases. So yeah, it hasn't always been tied into a large video production or a move towards that. Sometimes it was just sort of isolated pockets of use cases. So we've done many proof of concepts with varying degrees of success.
Is this something we will see in the future more and more, that cloud processing will be next to bare metal processing, that we try to migrate slowly, step by step even, or do customers switch right away?
I think we've kind of talked about it already. It's the question of the pragmatic approach. It's using the cloud where it makes sense and mixing it with the private cloud, and also with on the venue as well. But we ourselves have been involved for over a year with a POC with a major broadcaster, and a lot of the solutions we only actually released at the IBC. So we've got 6 active POCs now since the IBC rolling. So I hope that we can come back and have some more chunky real life examples to talk about. But yeah.
So we have to build trust again, right, for cloud processing. Different topic. When I started to be in broadcast, it was still analog, frankly speaking. Yeah, I'm that old already too. Not 50 years like Rob, but and in Ian, but it's something like 30 years already. And I could make sure whenever I connected my XLR connector to the back of the truck, to the tailboard, that transmission line was going out, and whatever the talent was coming in, IFBs were working, and when there was something wrong, it was my fault, because either later the mixing console configuration was wrong, the comm system was configured wrong, or simply the cable didn't work properly. It was very easy, actually, compared to what we have now with IP and now with cloud processing. And in cloud processing, a lot of more vendors are involved. It's AWS or it's Google or whoever, it's switch manufacturers, it's control systems. How do you make sure and tell your production team that your system is working 100% reliable with that many people involved, that many instances and processing systems involved? Do you set up in parallel an analog processing just to switch over to whatever a backup commentary at home in Paris?
You really need to build a trusting relationship with the IT teams, and that's not only because of cloud. That's because, firstly, that was because of audio and video over IP, and you really need to build that one team spirit, which is very important. Where the guys in IT, to be honest, it has been really challenging when we started that first at Eurosport, but you really need to build that one team spirit where the guys from IT are as involved as we used to be in live production and in live. They need to be engaged. They need to engage that. And when you manage to get that spirit, then you can promise to a customer. We are the final customer, so that's probably a bit different with you, John. But
you have a manager who.
Yeah, of course we have manager and we have internal customers. When it doesn't work, they know who we are and they can come. But the thing is that if you don't have the choice anymore. You can't. Everything cannot be only on your shoulders. because you cannot. One single people cannot have all that knowledge. You need to rely on network people, and the network people need to rely on us. And we really need to work all together. In Warner Bros. Discovery, for example, now we are all in the same business unit.
And do you have a direct support number in AWS, or how do you cope with this? Or Friday afternoon they go home, have a nice weekend, you show us on Saturday, or do you set up two systems in parallel?
We have 24/7. We have 24/7 support, and we have a lot of our infrastructure is main and backup between our two data centers, so you can switch quite easily from one to the other.
So no ticket when your system is not running, and come back with a couple of questions, and we
have. That's where we had to learn them. If I'm black on air, you can't tell me to raise a ticket. Yeah. Just help me, please, right now. So that has been quite a bit challenging, but to be honest, that's working really fine now.
Okay, cool. I think IT people have to learn from production people, and production people from IT people, right? We had this question several times already, and I think every company is using a different solution for this. Now we see cloud processing for second tier, third tier productions. We see this for add-on commentary and all this kind of stuff. Will we see cloud production, everything in the cloud for Premier League, for Bundesliga, or even the World Cups and the Olympics in a couple of years from now?
I don't think 5 years from now. I think it still needs to cut its teeth a bit and mature and get the confidence from broadcasters up in its ability. It's definitely on the road, though, I think. I can see from Premier League perspective, we'll be doing more add-ons and different things. We're always looking at new deliverables and new products to offer the broadcasters. And I think cloud has got a very big place in that. It's got a lot of advantages. The sort of flexibility, the sustainability side of it as well is also something that's quite interesting. So yeah, I can see it growing, but whether we're moving the full world feed production in 5 years, I think it'll be a little bit longer yet.
Have you plans already, if you can reveal them, about what you plan in 3-5 years in terms of cloud production?
I think that we'll probably go to an hybrid solution where we'll still have some of our audio productions on-prem and on hardware devices, and we'll probably be able to extend some of the processing in the cloud. The operators will still want to be in a room with a proper monitoring, with a physical desk, with a physical mixing desk. I don't see them mixing a Champions League final from their living room in the couch on a laptop. I don't really see that at least in the next 3 or 5 years. Pete may say another way, but I'm quite sure we'll still need that. And the first revolution was really the remote stuff, where the guys who are producing some events from Poland in their SCR in Poland, the back end is already in the Netherlands. So for them, moving from that back end, from that big mixing core in the Netherlands or in an AWS data center somewhere, that will not change a lot for them. So yes, I think that will happen. But yeah, really, this first step was really to go to remote and make them accept the remote, meaning that they can't go to the machine room anymore and restart their mixer. That's done.
It's done. It's over. Yeah. It's absolutely over. A couple of years from now, I mean, if cloud processing is going more and more into sports production, do you guys have any ideas how sports production will change? Will we see new content? We had this discussion about immersive audio and about all these new ideas, not just noise in the high channels. Is there anything on the horizon which you think that we have additional content in the main feed, or some new stuff you could offer? Where are we in 5 years in terms of sports production?
I think one of the practical things to talk about is the fact that being able to do this makes things economical. So perhaps it's the whole opportunity of being able to do more tier 2, tier 3 stuff rather than pushing the top end. It's the ability to more economically do sports that cannot now be done economically. I think that's an interesting thing that can absolutely play out in the next few years. With regards to future developments of, where it goes from there, I will pass on to other hands, I think.
You think that there's new possibilities to bring more people in live production due to cloud production, cloud processing?
Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing events come online or productions come online that are definitely in the lower tiers that are very niche. We just involved in a project that put I'll stop at calling it a sport. Some people might call it a sport. Others, it's a pastime, and I can't exactly say what it is, but because I don't think I'm allowed. And that's 100% cloud production. Everything is in the cloud. All the production staff are in remote locations around the United States. Everybody is using virtual control. There's no hardware control that I'm aware of. It's a combination of Grass Valley AMP, VisRT, so it's those companies working together, us on the comm side, and then everything else that's in there. And this is a streaming platform of a pastime that is a massive thing globally. You'll have to guess what it is. It's not darts or snooker.
I get the clear sign from Heather. No time for questions, right? Do we have time for one question? Thank you very much, guys, for this interesting panel.
Thank you.
Thanks to you in the audience. Immersive Mercer.
Yeah, hello. Do you think that, you didn't quite mention it, but I think you alluded to it, but scalability is the key, because contracts now are quite expensive, and to have that facility when it's been contract based, okay, we can expand, and that's really the real selling point for me of cloud.
Yeah, SaaS, the SaaS model, burst models, all of those things. Yeah, absolutely.
And the ability for pop-up events and
yeah.
I mean,
no need for long-term
amazing.
investment. It's not cheap, but at least it's a known cost. You can budget for it. Those sort of things.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will. I think the cloud will enable, let's say, more production. If I take the Eurosport example, where we have, let's say, major markets, we have smaller markets. If you have during Olympics or a Grand Slam, if during a Grand Slam a Romanian champion is really going very late in the tournament, you could imagine them having a localization only for Romania, for example, and they could do that today if they had to purchase, or if we had to build a full PCR, let's say hardware-based PCR, only for that 2 or 3, let's say, or 5 days event, that would not make any economical sense. Where today, if you can power up a SCR in the cloud for 1 week and then you shut it down until the next Grand Slam, that works, and that enables a lot more possibilities, I think.
That makes a lot of sense. Absolutely.
And sorry, just taking it from one further step from there, we're looking at IMG about having flexible working spaces. So somewhere where you can spin up a Simply Live or an AMP, or it could be an edit suite. So rather than just having a dedicated PCR room, we're looking at sort of more multifunctional rooms to make more use of the space, which is connected in as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much for this panel.
Thank you. Thank you.